Okay, so these can be a little overwhelming just because of everything that's on the screen. So first, we're just going to focus on System A and System B. And the first thing I want you to notice is that these two are the exact same. So that means that nothing was done to System A1 to turn it into B1. So we can get rid of those two things that end with a different B1. Now, next, we need to look at the difference between A2 and B2. Notice that there's no X term on B2. So that means they must have done something to eliminate the X term, right? So they had to have multiplied A1 by something, added it to A2 to get B2. So what might that have been? Well, if you think about it, what we're trying to do is add these two together and end up with an 11y, right, equals negative 44. That's what we're trying to get. So what would we have to multiply A1 by so that when we added it to A2, my x's would be eliminated? So I would need the coefficient of x in A1 to be a positive 6, which means I would have to multiply by a negative 3. Now let's look at B to C. So notice that B1 and C1 are the exact same thing. So nothing was done to B1 to turn it into C1, right? And nothing was done to B2 and added to B1 to turn it into C1. Okay, so now let's look at the difference between B2 and C2. The difference is that there's still no X term, but the Y term was divided, right, by 11, right? Both sides divided by 11. So we didn't do anything to we didn't do anything to B1 and add, we just did something to B2. So what did we do? We said we divided by 11, but that's the same thing as multiplying by 1 over 11. Let's look at another one. Here, the first thing I'm going to look at is A and B, and I notice that A2 and B2 are the exact same. So nothing was done to A2 to turn it into B2, and we didn't add and multiply to get B2. So now we need to look at the difference between A1 and B1. So there's nothing we could just multiply A1 by to get B1, right? If we just try to look at the 7 and the x, you would say, well, I could do 1/7 of A1 and get B1, but then that doesn't work for the coefficient of y, right? So it must be something else. So it must be that we multiply by something and add. So what that means is we want to add these two guys together and have this end up be x plus 2y equals negative 21, right? So what do we need to multiply A2 by? The second equation, so that we add it to A1, we get B1. So the other way to think about that is, what do I need to multiply 3x by so that when I add it to 7x, I get a positive x? Well, 7x minus 6x is x, so I have to multiply it by a negative 2. Now let's look at system B to system C. Notice that B1 to C1 is the same, so nothing happened to result in C1. When I look at the difference between B2 and C2, I notice there is no X. So the only way to get rid of that is through multiplication and addition, right? We can't just get rid of that by multiplying by something. So it must be this one. So the question is, what did I multiply B1 by so that when I add them together, I get a 0x? Well, to get a 0x, the coefficient of x in B1 would have to be -3. So I encourage you as you do these to take it slow and look at them in pieces.